I want to take one or two other quotations from Shakespeare before we go on to Melville. Take the great tragedies. Hamlet. Nowhere is Shakespeare ever up in the air and not coming back. Never. He's always dealing with some concrete political or social situation. What does Hamlet say after he has listened to his father? The time is out of joint. Oh, cursed spite that ever I was born to set it right. There are a lot of people get themselves into a lot of confusion as to the mystery of Hamlet. There is no mystery. Hamlet is the son of a king, and the time is out of joint. And he is born in a situation where he has to set it right, and he can't do it. And he knows in advance, the time is out of joint. Oh, cursed spite that ever I was born to set it right. That is a very concrete situation. Hamlet goes into all sorts of this and that and the other, but that is at the basis of his problem. Let us take another one. Macbeth. Macbeth kills Duncan and he becomes king. But it is not so nice. Very unpleasant. He had a lot of trouble. Duncan is in his grave. After life's fitful fever, he sleeps well. Treason has done his worst. Nor steel nor poison, malice domestic, foreign levy, nothing can touch him further. That is Macbeth talking about. He has succeeded to the kingdom. Listen, he has killed Duncan. He has become king. And it isn't so nice up there. Duncan is in his grave. He wishes he were in his too, but treason has done his worst. Nor steel nor poison, malice domestic nor foreign levy, nothing can touch him further. And Macbeth makes some other statements, a tremendous statement which is very Shakespearean and which I would like to spend some time on with you. Wherefore was that cry? Seaton tells him, the Queen, my lord, is dead. Macbeth, she should have died hereafter. There would have been a time for such a word. Tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time, and all our yesterdays have lighted full the way to dusty death. Now look at the simile. Out, brief candle, light but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets, his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. It is a complete condemnation of existence, but it is a condemnation of the life that people live from day to day. It isn't as in Melville, the sea sweeping over everything and wiping it out of existence. Now I think we can leave Shakespeare for a bit and go over to Melville. And when we come back to take progeny and ancestors, we'll get back more to these things. Now I don't intend to do Moby Dick with you. Everybody does Moby Dick. I want to deal with three stories that Melville wrote after he had written Moby Dick. One story is called Bartleby. The other story is called Las Encantadas. And the other story is called Benito Cereno. I must say there is a writer today, a man from New England, I think his name is Howell or Powell. He has written a play about Benito Cereno. All I can say is he thoroughly misunderstands Benito Cereno and he faithfully reproduces his misunderstanding in the play. Because that thing should not be misunderstood. But let us begin with Bartleby, the first story. The first story is entitled Bartleby. Bartleby is a scrivener. And the millions of girls who spend their lives typing and retyping documents every day will understand Bartleby well. Melville is writing about a certain type of social life. He has no solution. What he's saying is that is the kind of way that people live. And this is the kind of resentment that is built up in them by the conditions of existence to which they are submitted. That is the social significance of Bartleby. In the days before typewriters, these documents were written by hand. And that is the type of work done by Bartleby in a Wall Street lawyer's office. He's a young man, ill-dressed, thin, pale, silent. However, he copies the documents well. One day his employer asked him to check some papers. Bartleby replies, "I would prefer not to." Had he been rude, angry, or rebellious, he would have been sacked on the spot. But he is extremely, in fact, inhumanly calm. His employer is struck with astonishment. But he decides that maybe Bartleby is not well, or something. Bartleby is a good worker. So the lawyer lets the incident pass. Bartleby continues to do his work, but his employer, who tells the story, now observes Bartleby a little more closely than before. He notices that Bartleby never leaves the office. He sends the office boy out for a handful of ginger nuts on which to lunch. The employer, a successful, robust, aggressive type, feels some sympathy for him. But soon on another day, when called upon again to do some work, Bartleby again replies, "I would prefer not to," and will not do what he is asked to do. I sometimes ask myself, how many millions of people today now working in offices, when told to do something, would love to be able to say, "I would prefer not to. I don't want to leave because I must earn my living, but I would prefer not to." But Bartleby's employer has never in his life experienced anything like this. Not only now, he sees for the first time the shabbiness, the friendlessness, the loneliness of Bartleby. He is compelled to see the man who is working for him, as many employers never see the persons who are working for them at all. But Bartleby continues to disrupt the office periodically with his adamant, "I would prefer not to." This cannot go on. Soon Bartleby refuses to write anymore. He not only prefers not to, he will not. His employer attempts to dismiss him, but Bartleby will not leave. He prefers not to. His employer discovers by accident that Bartleby actually lives on the premises. By this time, the pale, mild-mannered clerk is haunting the lawyer. He offers to take Bartleby into his house for a time where he can live decently. For the first time he sees another human being, and he had to see another human being because Bartleby said, "I would prefer not to." Bartleby prefers not to, he wouldn't go. The lawyer at another time fears that he will lose his temper and by an unpremeditated blow murder Bartleby. Bartleby proceeds to take it easy. Finally, in despair, the lawyer abandons his office and moves to another one. Bartleby is arrested as a vagrant and sent to the Tombs prison among murderers and thieves. His employer, in deep distress, rushes there to see him and to arrange that he should have decent meals. But Bartleby rejects his help with some strange words. He doesn't say, "I prefer not to." He says, "I know you, and I want nothing to say to you." He will not eat, and they find him lying on the grass one day. Now, no one knows anything about Bartleby except that he once worked in the dead letter office in Washington. His work was to sort and burn letters addressed to people who were dead by the time they were located. Now, Melville is saying Bartleby, the work he was doing, was similar to the work he was doing when the government employed him. And that work was to sort and burn letters addressed to people who were dead when the letters reached them. An absolutely useless activity with no understanding of any significance at all to the person who was doing it. And I know nowhere where Melville so clearly states what is his view of a certain type of activity that is carried on by large millions of human beings today. People talk about alienation, and Marx talked a lot about alienation, but Melville had seen it very clearly. And historians' dead letters, does it not sound like dead men? And the last phrase is, our Bartleby, our humanity. What are we to make of this story? First of all, this is still the old Melville of Moby Dick. Melville's story is realistic to the last comma. You live in a Wall Street office. Bartleby is presented with a touch of fantasy, but he's as real as an inkpot. But though he is writing in 1853, Melville has in his remorselessly scientific manner isolated a section of society in his own time which has grown to immense importance in our own day. Those millions of human beings who spend their strength, vitality, and capacity for living day after day, taking down, typing, checking, filing, and then looking for documents which are to them as dead as the dead letters Bartleby handled. Now there is no solution to that. You have a Democratic Party, the Republican Party, you have a Labour Party, you have a Communist Party. In fact, the Communist Party does more of that than anybody else. This today has reached the stage which Melville could hardly have envisaged, but he saw the tendency of things. And over again the words he uses bring to mind the contemporary millions who constitute the hewers of wood and drawers of water for the vast administrative machines that now dominate modern life. That is the significance of the story of Bartleby. But Melville is not finished with that. He goes on to discuss Las Encantadas. Now Las Encantadas are a series of volcanic islands which you find way out in the sea somewhere. They lie off the beaten track of vessels in the Pacific Ocean. They have neither rain nor any kind of water. And Melville visited the island and nobody lives there. And he proceeds to write a story about them. It isn't a story, it is a parable. And the thing that impresses him about them chiefly is the prevalence on the islands of tortoises. Of the tortoises he writes haunting sentences, as for example, they seem newly crawled forth from beneath the foundation of the world. It was as if everything was beginning all over again. And then he says he lies in bed, and these peculiar animals cannot understand that you cannot take things directly. He says they leave one of them in the night, hammering to bore his way through a part of the deck, and in the morning you get up, he's still trying to get through. He doesn't understand that you can't make it that way. And Melville then implies, I have known them in their journeyings, ram themselves heroically against rocks, and long abide there, nudging, wriggling, wedging, in order to displace them and so hold on to their inflexible path. Their crowning curse is their drudging impulse to straightforwardness in a belittled world. Now, their crowning curse is their grudging impulse to straightforwardness in a belittled world. It is quite obvious that he means they are symbolical of human existence upon a difficult world. And if you are in doubt about that, he then goes on to say that he sees signs and visions of them when he is run away from New York and sits among the trees in the Adirondack. And in the midst of the most elegant and graceful culture that American civilization can show, these tortoises trying to make their way in an impossible straightforwardness in a confused world. He sits in these elegant surroundings and he sees tortoises. Let me quote his own words. For often in scenes of social merriment, and especially at revels held by candlelight in old-fashioned mansions, so that shadows are thrown into the further recesses of an angular and spacious room, making them put on a look of haunted undergrowth of lonely woods. I have drawn the attention of my comrades by my fixed gaze and sudden change of air, as I have seemed to see, slowly emerging from these imagined solitudes and heavily crawling along the floor, the ghost of a gigantic tortoise, with memento mori, memory of death, burning in live letters upon his back. That is his view of the life that people live. It is to him symbolical of the tortoises that try to force their way, a straightforward way in a belated world. And when he has left Las Encantadas and he goes back to New York and he goes to these beautiful homes where they are eating and drinking by candlelight and everything is beautiful, suddenly amidst all this beautiful, highly cultured civilization, he sees the tortoise, and on its back is marked memento mori. I think we can understand that today much better than many people would have understood it at the time. And the final story has the same inevitability about it, and at the same time shows Melville's remarkable Anglo-Saxon penetration and understanding on objective situations. It is perhaps one of the finest short stories that I know. A Yankee captain, competent, jolly and good-humored, is at anchor one morning in a harbor off the coast of Chile. He sees a strange vessel coming to port and he goes off to pay it a visit. The vessel is a Spanish slaver with slaves on board, and the captain, Benito Cereno, whose name gives the title to the story, tells a sad tale of unfavorable weather, sickness and a hard voyage. The Yankee captain is full of sympathy. Benito Cereno is followed everywhere by a Negro, Babo, who is unfailingly solicitous in his attentions to his master. The Yankee captain, reminding himself how well suited by nature Negroes are to be domestic servants, is very pleased by this. Benito Cereno is a sick man, and at times his behavior is strange. Captain Delano is mystified at many unusual incidents on board the ship, but he makes allowances. The Negroes on board and the characteristics of Negroes occupy much of his attention. The slaves are in tumult, but some are working. 6 blacks in particular, elevated above the general throng, are busy cleaning rusty hatchets. Periodically they clash the hatchets together, and the captain recognizes how fond Negroes are of uniting industry with pastime. He sees a mulatto steward on board. Is it true, he asks himself, that mulattoes are hostile to being placed in a subordinate position to blacks? He sees a Negro woman, slave woman, sleeping on deck while her baby sucks at the nipple, and he is pleased at this glimpse of the natural relations between a primitive mother and child. He is so impressed with Babo's unceasing attentions to his master that he offers to buy Babo as his personal servant. Remember that, please. He offers to buy Babo as his personal servant, a proposal which, as could have been expected, the faithful Babo indignantly opposes. Captain Delano is one of those white men who not only understand but who love Negroes. Finally, Captain Delano leaves the ship and goes back into his own boat. Suddenly, as the climax of his somewhat strange behavior all day, Benito Cereno leaps into the boat and Babo leaps after him with a knife. Captain Delano fears that his own life is in danger from the ever-faithful Babo, but he soon learns the truth. Babo's knife is intended for Benito Cereno, and after the black is overpowered, the whole story comes out. The slaves had revolted and seized the ship. They had tried to escape to freedom, but had not succeeded. When they came into the harbor, Babo, the leader, organized a new plot. They would pretend that Benito Cereno was still captive, but he, Babo, would be in attendance on him all day, and if he so much as tried to say a word, he would be immediately killed. All on board, slaves and white sailors, had been instructed by Babo what to do. The slaves kept watch on the sailors. the hatchet polishers, were not Negroes uniting industry with pastime, as is the habit of Negroes. They were on guard, ready to intervene in any disturbance. The mulatto steward did not object to Negroes being over him. He was Babo's faithful lieutenant. The Negro women were not kindly primitives. They had taken a leading part in the revolt. Delano's men finally recaptured the ship, and Babo was beheaded. But here, as early as 1855, Melville had, in the opinions of the capable, well-meaning, Negro-loving Captain Delano, itemized every single belief cherished by an advanced civilization about a backward people, and then one by one showed that they were not merely false, but were the direct cause of Captain Delano's own blindness and stupidity. Under his very nose, Babo had been forcing Benito Cereno to participate in a new plot aimed at capturing Delano's own ship. That is a tremendous story to have written in 1855. Many people in America don't understand it up to today. One person who does not understand it is Mr. William Styron. He has written a book about Nat Turner. It isn't about Nat Turner at all. It's about William Styron himself. That's all. His attitude. But there, Melville has said, you see, you think that and that and that and that about Negroes, and that means you cannot understand what is under your nose. It's a tremendous story to have written in 55. And Melville, with his usual scientific precision, does not write of Negro slaves. He writes of the Negro race, civilized and uncivilized alike. Harriet Beecher Stowe had got a great reputation with her novel, and in it there was Uncle Tom. She wouldn't have known what would have happened to Uncle Tom by the time the 20th century had begun. And Uncle Tom has now got a wife. She's Aunt Thomasina. I don't know how true that is. But Uncle Tom, Harriet Beecher Stowe said, this is a marvelous man. The years have passed, but Babo remains one of the most heroic characters in Melville's fiction. And Melville purposely makes him not a big, strong black Negro, he makes him physically small, a man of internal power with a brain that is a hive of subtlety. Now I think in those three stories, you get an example of the American type of writing. And that being so, we can then move on to some general surveys about ancestry. The man I want to refer to first of all is Fenimore Cooper. Fenimore Cooper wrote 5 stories. You remember them? The Deer Slayer, which is the story of Natty Bumppo in his early days, but which was the last story. The Last of the Mohicans, Pathfinder, The Prairie, and another one, The Pioneers, in which Fenimore Cooper takes particular pains to write about certain elementary features of human life. The persons who are the really heroic members of that society are Chingachgook, the Mohican, and Uncas, his son. And Natty Bumppo is a remarkable person insofar as he shares the outlook of those Amerindians. He is a white man in appearance, but in his general attitude to life, he is an Amerindian of the same type of human being as Chingachgook and Uncas. It is very strange that Fenimore Cooper, writing so early, had got away from the ordinary social problems that you find always in an English writer. And he was dealing with certain elementary features of human society. That is the way people are. That is the best kind of people in this mysterious civilization in which we live. And I want to go a little further with that Fenimore Cooper. D.H. Lawrence, writing about American literature, a book that has certainly lost its reputation, but I still think a very fine book, he points out that there was a love affair between Cora, whose father was an officer, a white man, but whose mother, he hints, was a quadroon woman from the Caribbean. And there is a love affair between her and one of the men who is traveling, and there is another terrific love affair between Magua the Indian. He is in love with Cora, and there are people today who say that in reality, Lawrence said, You notice the love affair between all these, between the savage and the civilized. And today people have gone further. They are saying that in reality, Fenimore Cooper was dealing with the fundamental racial question in the United States between white people and black, but he didn't have the nerve to do it, so he hid it as to affairs, racial affairs between the whites and the Amerindians. How true that is, I don't know. I haven't been followed it up. But I want you to note that he wrote those stories and I read them as a boy, was fascinated by them. And then I read Lawrence writing about them and pointing out to the relations of love between different types of people. And now today I see people saying that that is in reality a subconscious or conscious picture of the racial relations that were troubling the United States at that time. And I am once more astonished at the validity and vitality of literature that is done by a man who is watching what he is doing and is not imitating anybody else. And I want to end by taking a note of how distinguished some writers are in the British system today and the Americans, because one can only mention and hope that it will stimulate thoughts and investigations in a certain direction. I will begin with the English writers, the descendants of Shakespeare and the rest of them. At the beginning of the 20th century and near the end of the 19th, they had gone to pieces completely. They had had the tradition since Chaucer and Beowulf. Right along, they had had the tradition of writing in relation to a social structure. By the end of the 19th century, they couldn't do that. And this tradition, which the English have had for many centuries, one of the greatest literary traditions in the world, has gone to pieces because their writers were always in relation to some sort of social movement. But they haven't got that anymore, and they can't write. Now, the Americans are not too much better off, but they are better off. They have the race question. And of all the American writers, except Mark Twain in one story, none of them seem to be aware that a race question existed in the United States. Until after World War I, two writers appeared who were aware of it. The two writers who have made it clear that there is a racial question in the United States, Richard Wright and William Faulkner. I think that is very important for us to know. I believe I have said a few things that mattered and have carefully not made it clear that the examples I have pointed out are to be looked upon as examples characteristic of the whole. But I hope you have seen certain examples of literature, certain people in a light or certain light in regard to certain fundamental trends in both American and English literature. And there must be some kind of road along which you're traveling, otherwise everything is in a hopeless mess.